hello. I'm so glad you're here. It's quite exciting with Thimble at the moment, isn't it? Although the Blackened Forest sounds like it's having a terrible time. Goodness me, I do hope they can help save those poor little spirits. These are terrible times. We all need to help each other as much as we can. Thankfully, in our realm, we've had the news that a new leader has been elected. But we won't find out who that is until our grand fairy ball next week. Goodness, I'm not big on balls myself. But everybody's very excited, so that's nice to see. And I do like all the flowers and the decorations. Anyway, we should get back and see how Thimble's doing. Because she does seem a bit perturbed. She's made a very big decision on using her magic. I mean, goodness me! I do hope that it doesn't mean that she has to... Yes. Well, anyway, let's find out. The elves bade farewell, and Thane promised that he would help Thimble on her return to the Blackened Forest. And the elves left the shelter of the willow's protective branches. The heavens opened and the rain fell in the biggest droplets of water the two fairies had ever seen. "We shall wait for the rain to ease a little," said Thimble. "I'm sure it will stop soon enough." And they both sat together in silence as the water ran in streams all around them. After about an hour of the rain cloud's persistent fall, and with not a glimmer of it stopping, Thimble decided that they could wait no more. "I cannot stay here any longer, Blossom. We shall just have to see if our magic works in these conditions," said Thimble, pulling out a reluctant twig from her bag. Stepping out into the open, the fairies held hands, blinked twice, and zapped their feet with their wands. But nothing happened. Not even the smallest spark was visible, as the rain continued to soak through their clothes and dampen all their belongings. "We must try again. This time we shall blink 4 times and hope for the very best," said Thimble. So once again the two little fairies held hands, blinked and zapped their feet. This time there was a bright spark, but it did nothing but fizzle out and form a puff of smoke in the air. "Bother and goodness!" exclaimed Thimble, knowing that they had no other option than to wait until the rain clouds cleared. And she feared from past experience that it would be a very, very long wait. As they sat under the willow looking across the grassland towards Org, willing the clouds away, the fairies started to make out a small white blob moving towards them in the sky. "What do you think that is, Blossom?" Thimble asked as the blob grew bigger. "I have no idea," replied Blossom, squinting to try and make out what it was through the heavy rain. Then, as it got bigger, they could make out the movement like wings flapping, and soon they both realised that it wasn't a blob. It was 2 blobs, which weren't actually blobs at all, but Leaf and Willa. They looked so majestic as they swept through the driving rain, the water rolling off their backs, leaving a trail where they had flown. How wonderful. Yes, I know. Swooping down, the 2 lunaci bowed to Thimble and Blossom. Both the fairies were overjoyed to see them and rushed over to give them a big hug. "Leaf, my dear old friend, I am so glad to see you," said Blossom, who hadn't seen him since leaving the Opals. Leaf and Willa laughed with delight at seeing their fairy saviours, but also looked as though they had important news. "We are here to help you get home," said Leaf with a smile. "If we all help each other, maybe we can help save the forest and the precious spirits inside." And he and Willa knelt down so that Thimble and Blossom could climb onto their backs. How wonderful. The sun was shining over Moorland Valley. Prunus had been planting everlasting sweet peas all morning and had dropped into the royal kitchens to see his good friend Myrtle for a late breakfast. "Have you seen what moon it is tonight?" inquired Myrtle, pointing a wooden spoon at a parchment calendar which displayed the moon cycles in the valley on the wall. Prunus pulled up a stool and bit into a freshly made scone Myrtle had put in front of him. "Indeed I do, and I do hope our little flower is on her way home," he said, with a concerned look on his face. "I can't help feeling a little responsible for her having to leave our valley in the first place, Myrtle. And I have had many nightshade nightmares about it," he sighed, as he dolloped another spoonful of strawberry jam on the last mouthful of his scone. Myrtle busied herself mixing a bowl of biscuit batter and, by all accounts, didn't look at all concerned. "Don't you worry, Prunus dearie," she said with confidence. "The tea leaves never lie." And she winked at him with a huge smile on her face as she held up an empty teacup from the night before. "Sweet roses, well, that is good," said Prunus, whose worries weren't really eased by this at all. "Let us keep a thorny lookout for her today, then." And he picked up another scone before leaving to find Lord Flute. The apple orchard were busy with bees busying themselves collecting pollen, and in one of the sunny corners, sat underneath his favourite tree, was Lord Flute. Prunus waved and headed over to see if there had been any word from Thimble, but he could soon tell by the way Lord Flute was procrastinating, and more importantly what he was procrastinating about, that there had been no word in the Flute household on Thimble's whereabouts. 203... No. 302... Oh dear, said Lord Flute, unaware of Prunus standing next to him. "What in the geranium and marigold is the matter?" inquired Prunus, making Lord Flute jump out of his skin. Prunus, good to see you," he said, brushing himself down and shaking Prunus by the hand. Lord Flute began to explain that the moon cycles had somewhat confused him, which meant knowing exactly when to expect his little daughter home was proving rather difficult. Lady Flute, however, was insistent that he go and find out, as she had completed Thimble's wedding gown, and all it needed now was Thimble to try it on. Goodness me, yes, I know. Prunus looked thoughtful for a moment. "So you think our little daffodil will return alone then?" he said, having not even contemplated such a thought. "No." And Lord Flute nodded. "Well," continued Prunus, "today is the first moon in Neptune, and so we should expect our little Thimble any time between now and dusk," he continued, with a little disappointment in Lord Flute's lack of faith in his talented daughter. But clearly Lady Flute was hoping that Thimble's marriage would still take place, and he supposed that by all accounts anyone would be proud to have their daughter invited into the royal household. He just thought it was rather a shame it was Till she would be marrying. Picking an apple from a low-hanging branch, Prunus bade farewell and invited Lord and Lady Flute to join him and Myrtle at the palace gates later that day for the important arrival of Thimble. The whole valley was alive with excitement, hope and anticipation. All the banners which had been hung out to wish Thimble well on her journey all those moons ago had been pulled out of their boxes and hung up across every house and tree. The birds were singing as loud as they could, with small flocks taking it in turns to keep a lookout for Thimble's return. Queen Lilybell had ordered her knaves to have a constant vigil at the palace gates, while she nervously paced up and down her library eating buns lavished in chocolate and pink icing. Don't be rude. Myrtle had baked cake upon cake which adorned long tables stretching from the palace gardens to as far as Strawberry Woods. Goodness me. Even the fire dragons were hovering above the pink lakes in anticipation for what wonders Thimble may be bringing home with her. Noon came and went, and still there was an air of great excitement. But as the hours ticked down and still there was no sign, some of the valley folk started to fear the worst. Soon whispers turned into rumours, and slowly the party plates were collected and some of the banners started to be taken down. Lord and Lady Flute stood at the palace gates with brave faces, but it didn't take long for Lady Flute to crumble into floods of tears as she stood hugging the special lace dress she had made Thimble to wear on her return. Prunus looked at Myrtle, who kept glancing at her watch. She had been silent for ages, and Prunus had no idea what she was doing.
"Don't you worry, Prunus dearie,"
she kept saying.
"Timing is my thing."
And just as the valley folk were about to return to their homes, disappointed and full of sorrow, something very odd happened. One of the Queen's knaves started the palace warning bells, a sign that danger was approaching. Something that hadn't happened in many, many moons, and certainly not since the Flatland troll invasion. Goodness, no. I know. Suddenly, there were knaves running everywhere, fairies running to their homes, and Lord and Lady Flute, along with Prunus and Myrtle, headed for the safety of the royal kitchens. Oh, those are the calling birds. Goodness me, they've come to take me home. This is nearly the last of our episodes. Next time shall be the last time you see me, as we will come to the end of our glorious story with Thimble. Goodness me. Who knew I would get so emotional? I shall miss you very much. But I shall come back, I'm sure. Anyway, I'm sure you will return next time. Until then, take care. And remember, don't stop. I'm not crying. I'm in the middle of saying something very important. Anyway, as I was rudely interrupted, remember, don't stop believing, especially in you.